and glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, graduate of Harvard Law School, I might add. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be back on with you.
Can I have your reaction to the indictment and arraignment of former President Trump yesterday?
Hugh, never before in American history has the party in power targeted a former president with criminal charges. That's a step that ought not be taken lightly. But Alvin Bragg's indictment of Donald Trump is a joke. I've reviewed it carefully now. It's even flimsier than was reported by his leaks over the last few weeks. First, every so-called crime appears to be beyond the 5-year statute of limitations. Second, on the merits of those so-called crimes, they should be dismissed as a matter of law. So I guess his theory is that the president falsified business records to cover up federal election crimes, yet not even the Federal Election Commission pursued those so-called crimes, or the Department of Justice or Alvin Bragg's predecessor. And then when you move from the law to the evidence, think about what the evidence is here, Hugh. You have the testimony of a woman who has repeatedly contradicted herself on the very matter at issue. And then you have the testimony not just of any convicted felon, but a man convicted of lying under oath, and a man who has made his desire to get revenge on the former president well known. So all of these things demonstrate to me that this is nothing but a political witch hunt by Alvin Bragg and the Democrats on their now 8-year quest to get Donald Trump. Some other things there that show it's a political witch hunt. You know, Hillary Clinton's campaign has confessed to doing this exact same thing on the Steele dossier, directing payments that were characterized as legal expenses when they were really designed to pay for the Steele dossier. And she's paid $113,000 fine for that. And where was her campaign based? It was based in New York City, but where are the charges against Hillary Clinton? Or just consider another fact. I mean, the next hearing is not until December, probably 1 month for the Iowa caucus, less than a year before the general election on relatively straightforward, simple charges. All of this suggests to me that the Democrats just want to drag this out. So it's the central issue in our primary nominating campaign, and then the general election, should Donald Trump be our nominee. So it's a very, very disappointing day. It's a very dangerous day because once a bell like this has been rung, it's hard to unring it. And I wish that Alvin Bragg had thought more about the precedent he was setting for a country that has never pursued presidents once they leave office with criminal charges, like, regrettably, so many countries around the world do.
Senator, I've been looking high and low for any liberal to left-wing commentator with credentials who is defending this. I cannot find anyone. My friend and colleague Ruth Marcus is maybe the smartest liberal reporter, journalist, and Harvard Law School grad writing, and she backs. It takes her a while to get there, but then she says at the end, but. There's no there. There's no dog that barked. They didn't even name the felony.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh, it's remarkable the silence you have from the left. Some honest liberals are even saying this is incredibly weak, and they're regretting that Alvin Bragg moved forward because they're hoping that some of these other investigations into Trump prove more fruitful. They're afraid, I guess, that this is going to interfere with those or color the public's perception of those investigations. But I have not seen a single liberal commentator, or for that matter, any of my Democratic colleagues, who want to come within a 10-foot pole of this flimsy indictment. And as you say, Alvin Bragg didn't even name the underlying crime in the indictment. And at his press conference yesterday, he was asked why he didn't. And he says, because the law doesn't require it. So think you're Donald Trump now and his lawyers. It's like being back in the Star Chamber. It's like the show trials of Stalin. They don't even know what they're charged with. Yeah, they're charged with this little misdemeanor crime, but to be a felony under New York law, there has to be an underlying crime that the so-called falsified business records concealed. They still don't know what that crime is.
Can we pause on that for a moment, Senator? That's so deeply unfair. They need to bring a motion to dismiss. I believe that motion will be successful if the judge is fair. But to bring a motion to dismiss, you need to know what you're charged with, right? I mean, there just isn't. It's such a Grand Canyon-sized hole in the indictment that I can't get past that. If he can't articulate the felony, it's a fraud.
Hugh, it would seem to me there's two different grounds to dismiss. First, the indictment is legally invalid. It doesn't assert the actual offenses with which he is charged. What is the underlying offense here? But second, suppose that it is some kind of federal election crime, even though the Federal Election Commission wouldn't pursue it. Think about the theory of that case, Hugh. Alvin Bragg's theory of his case is that a candidate for public office is not allowed to use his campaign money, his donors' money, the $5 and $10 contributions that people send into TomCotton.com or DonaldTrump.com, not just allowed to use that for personal purposes, but that the law requires you to use it for personal purposes. That you the only way you could say pay for a non-disclosure agreement is with your campaign funds. Consider a candidate, Hugh, who's, let's say, going through a divorce. It happens. Life continues, even when you're a candidate for office. Is Alvin Bragg's theory of the case that you have to use campaign funds to pay for your divorce lawyer because your divorce might be embarrassing and harmful to your campaign? That's a second ground to dismiss as a matter of law this indictment, because the theory is so far-fetched. Again, it's just an illustration that this is a political witch hunt from a man who, by the way, has let crime run so rampant in New York City that his own Democratic mayor says the criminal justice system there is a laughingstock.
Well, Alvin Bragg needed a headline. He needed to fulfill a campaign promise, and so he perverted American justice. But Justice Jackson warned in his famous remarks on the federal prosecutor, never prosecute a person, prosecute a crime. They can't name the crime. It's a fraud. My question is there Tom DeLay was brought down by an out-of-control political prosecutor in Texas. That's the only thing I can come up with. And, Ray Donovan was wrongly charged. He said, where do I go to get my reputation back? But I've never seen anything like this. When they aimed at Agnew, they got Agnew because Agnew was guilty of accepting a bribe, and they had the evidence, and he quit. Is there any predicate of anything remotely like this, in your knowledge, where an out-of-control prosecutor slams together, jumps up, stacks, use whatever term you want, the same allegation 3 dozen times, and then says, I'll come up with a felony later, and this, my friends, is my baked cake? Have you ever seen anything like this?
Hugh, I can't recall offenses that are so far-fetched, and literally, as we said, it's unprecedented because it's a former president and the current presidential candidate. Tom DeLay was one example. You offered Ted Stevens, the former senator, who was hounded into his death by corrupt Department of Justice lawyers who ended up facing penalties or even committing suicide over their misdeeds. Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, who was convicted of, I think, bribery charges or corruption charges, only to have it reversed by the Supreme Court 9-0. And the only reason that case was 9-0 is because there aren't 11 justices to vote it down. There's a pattern here of the left weaponizing law enforcement, whether it's the Department of Justice or Alvin Bragg or other local prosecutors, against Republicans.
Now, your good colleague and chairman of Judiciary, Dick Durbin, he's holding a hearing on this, isn't he? I mean, he wants to defend the rule of law in America and try and stop the politicization of prosecution. Has he already called you and asked you to help set up that hearing?
I've missed it so far. I suspect, again, that Democrats in the Senate aren't going to want to touch these charges for the 10-foot pole because they know how embarrassing this is to Alvin Bragg and to the Democrats. But for America, it's dangerous. We do not have a tradition or a custom or a practice of weaponizing law enforcement against political opponents. But that's what Alvin Bragg has opened the door to here. The left's view of the law is now violent criminals should go free, political opponents should be jailed.
What do you think Xi Jinping thinks about this circus?
I think he probably imagines that it's going to divide America further and keep our focus inward while he's focusing on building up his defenses so we can go for the jugular in Taiwan in the near future. That's one reason why it's unfortunate that these charges are now blotting out all the coverage of very other important matters, like, for instance, Tsai Ing-wen's trip through the United States, meeting with senators and congressmen in both parties while the administration pretends this is not happening and conciliates and appeases Xi Jinping, who's threatening those very senators and congressmen.
Evan Gershkovich has been taken hostage by Vladimir Putin, a Wall Street Journal reporter. Unfortunately, Americans haven't heard about Evan Gershkovich very much because Alvin Bragg took the coverage away from him. That is, to me, the most immediate deep damage, is that we ought to be unified in our outrage that an American journalist has been seized as a hostage by the thug Putin, And very few people remember. I had to just double check. Gerskovich. Last comment to you, Senator. That is another casualty of this fraud.
And I'm praying for Evan Gerskovich and his family during this Passover. He should be released immediately. This is another reason why President Biden should stop negotiating for hostages and giving away arms dealers like Victor Boot, as he did with Brittany Griner. It only encourages more hostage taking.
Well said. Senator Cotton, a happy Easter to you and your family. Thank you for joining me. Lots ahead, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.